All right, coming back, and we just finished up with financial. Let's make the move to moral support. Pastor Mike, as we're talking about moral support, what kind of support can we, on the side of the American, the missions pastor, the support team, what kind of support can we give to the missionary? And then we'll talk about how the missionary then needs to communicate back to us in this two-way street.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is we often view missionaries as like superhumans, right? And we put an unrealistic expectation on them.
Okay.
And they're just people like we are. They're going to have the same struggles. They're going to have fights with their spouses. Their kids are going to be rambunctious, and they're going to have the same issues. They're the same sinners like we are. And that helps kind of bring some comfort in a sense, because a lot of times I think we're a little bit more intimidated. Well, you are the super spiritual Christians because you're a missionary. No, they're not. And they're just dying and longing for fellowship and wanting to have a friend, and you're fully intimidated by them, and they're nervous about, and there's just this disconnect a lot of times, and to recognize that they're just people. And they're hungry and starving for fellowship that we take for granted because we have amazing churches here. We have friends that we could go get coffee with at any point we want to. And a lot of times we're just nervous to reach out to a missionary and say, hey, I would love to set up a Skype call with you, or would you be willing to do that? And the missionaries are like, what? And it's going to be awkward at first, but you're going to slowly develop that relationship and that friendship, and you're going to be able to provide a lot of moral support, to them, and eventually walls will get broken down, and they'll start opening up to you about struggles, that they're going through, and things like that you don't need to judge them on because you would go through the exact same struggles. I've had people come to me as a missions pastor and be like, you need to pull so-and-so off the field. Why? Well, because he had a fight with his wife. Okay, they're fine. You expect missionaries not to and by the way, the stress that they're under is a lot more than the stress that we're under. So no wonder, they're going to have that. But we need to help them with their marriages and with their parenting and those type of things. So it's don't be afraid to develop relationships with the missionaries. Recognize it's going to be a slow process. Recognize they feel like they have to be guarded. Because they're supposed to, meet this unrealistic expectation, or else people might not support them, and gossip will go forth because you now told 10 other people they're fighting and their marriage is falling apart, and it's really not. It's just they had a bad day, and the car got a flat tire, and it took 4 days to get fixed, and it's just normal missions life out there.
You had made a statement earlier that kind of set me back, but it was so true. You had said that the missions pastor is kind of like the mediator, right? Where you got the missionary breaking down, and you got the people over here confused, and the missions pastor or the missions coordinator, depending upon the church and the structure, is a mediator that stands between the missionary and the people. And what does that missions pastor need to do?
Yeah, we had said we need a mediator, like we have a great high priest who can sympathize with us. That is the good part about missions pastors that have served on the mission field, not just done a bunch of short-term trips.
Right.
Because short-term trips are great, but unless they've gone through actual that culture shock level where you just you want to beat up everybody, you can't sympathize with them. And you're gonna be like, dude, they're just a bunch of flesh balls, and what's wrong with these people? And as a missions pastor, you serve a great role of telling the missionary, like, you're human. It's okay. I've been there. I've done that. I mean, I've wanted to
Firebomb.
Yeah, I wanted to fire. I wasn't going to throw out that term.
Yeah,
but
we'll use that in security.
You share that story?
Firebomb, yeah.
I want to firebomb them, you know. And then on the people here, now I get to be that mediator, like you say, and Rob, and oh, hold on, they're okay. We're not sounding alarms. We're not purchasing plane tickets. I don't need to get over there. They're okay. They're people, and they're going to have struggles. And what we need to do is we need to pray for them. Right? We need to intercede for them. We don't need to judge them. We need to help them. And what they need is encouragement. They don't need your self-righteousness, right? You know, and we're able to kind of be that mediator to stand in the gap. And then also as a missions pastor to a missionary, and this is what all of us can do. You don't just have to have a title. It's where we can relate with them because we're human. Right? Like, yeah, I'm struggling with that too. You know, my wife, she was a missionary in Mexico. She's single, and she struggled with singleness on the mission field radically. And she's now able to minister to single gals serving on the mission field, and is able to relate. Like, you're not like a big flesh ball sinner. It's okay. The things you're dealing with, and this is how you succeed. You know,
and it's normal.
It's normal.
It's actually the majority are single females.
For sure. Yeah. Right. You're not
at
disqualified.
Least 70%.
Yeah. You're not disqualified. You're okay. And you know, we put here our goal. So much times when we talk to missionaries, it's always our first question. I was like, "How's the ministry?" Because the missionary's identity is wrapped up in the ministry they do. And because again, we're good Americans, and it's about the task and those type of things, and how many people are coming to the church now, and those pressure task oriented, and we put here, we get right to the HR, but we forget the relationship. Like we forget, no, this is about friendship. This is about people. And my first question to the missionary is not how the ministry's going. How are you doing? Right? Like, what can I pray for you about? How's your family? How are your kids? Right? What's the struggle that they're going through personally? What are the things that you're not putting in your prayer requests? You know, that you're posting on Facebook. You know, what's behind that? You know, oh, dude, my son is, you know, having night terrors, and you know, whatever it might be. You know, and we really need we need prayer for this. And now you're able to get to actually what matters. You know, in the relationship, and the missionary is now able to get some healing and to get some prayer where it's needed and verbalized, and that takes some time to develop that friendship to get to that level of trust. But that's the goal, because it's a click in our American off of our task-oriented mindset onto people, and that's what we should be doing with our missionaries. They're people, and they're sinners just like we are, and they need help, they need prayer, they need discipleship, they need love, they need random phone calls of encouragement for no purpose other than just to say, hey, love you, praying for you. Right. It's not about anything business or anything. You know?
Now with text messaging,
for sure.
How much easier is it just to say, been thinking about you all weekend, praying for you.
Yeah. I have WhatsApp. You guys, so all of our missionaries, like in Asia, you know, just I'm texting a guy in India all the time, daily. We're talking, how's it going? What's going on? It's like amazing. Yeah. You know, I mean, could you imagine?
No,
you know,
no, because I text my students in the refugee camp, and then my people in South Sudan and people that I know in Sri Lanka. We're texting all the time.
Yeah.
Now it comes in at midnight sometimes,
for sure.
And 3 in the morning.
Yeah. It's so much easier to do that, and we don't realize, like, you could text a missionary. You know, it's very simple, and you can do it for free. A Facebook message, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't
have
to cost you 50 cents on a international text message, but you can go on Facebook, get WhatsApp, and make that effort, because it's so easy. It's not complicated. Right. We're texting all the time.
And then I think another thing that works well, and this could be from anybody, is somebody goes out on the field and you keep it in your calendar. This is something that you really love. But let's say you're a part of a care team of people. There's maybe 5 or 6 of you that are caring for this one missionary, this one family, and you put it in your calendar. So-and-so's been there for a month. They need a phone call. How's the first month? And I know from missions class or from personal experience that missionaries go through these things. Have you gone through those things? And let them know that you know that they're struggling, and then now they have an open door to say, I am struggling. And then they feel like they're not crazy. And then you put it on the list for another month, and another month, and another month, and you just keep calling them in these random increments. And they don't have to be specific times, you don't have to make an appointment, you just call them up and say, I've been praying for you. And I've heard that at the 3-month point, you go from excited to totally disillusioned. And then I realized there's this coping time, that 9 months and that 1 year process, and you just talk them through it. You don't have to have even gone through it yourself.
Yeah.
Now, if you have gone through it, then you tell them, when I was in that position, this is what happened in my life. Like, for example, just the other day, we had a staff member from our home church. She's been there for 17 years, and she was moving to a new church. It was breaking her heart. So I talked about what it's like to be a missionary and to leave those that you love, because God's calling you to go make new friends and to love others, but you have to leave one group that you love to go and love another group. And she's like, that ministered to me so much.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, she's a staff member moving from Yorba Linda to Orange, California. It's like 10 miles apart. But it was the same thing. She just needed to know that she wasn't crazy. So moral support. And okay, go ahead.
I had, with the missionary I was talking to today, I had asked them, because they're on kind of an extended vision tour. They're going on like a 6-month, just kind of checking out, doing some training, and they've been there for 3 months. And it was a husband and a wife, and they're young. The husband's 24, she's 23, and they're young. They have 2 kids, and just the cutest couple ever. And they were amazing. And I'm like, okay, 3 months. How are you doing? Like, what's going on? And I had the girl, I don't say this bragging, but I had her in tears in like a minute, because she's just like,
all you have to do is turn it on.
It's just, it was relief for her, because she's like, she's feeling so much pressure to put on a show. And I just paused for a minute and just, hey, we're gonna talk about you for a second. Like, how are you doing? Like, what's the struggle? Like, how are your kids doing? You know, how's the, like, are you just terrified all the time for malaria? You know,
What country are they in?
Uganda.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And, you know, and just,
Snakes. And
you know, and it's also,
spiders
it's now, she's now able to just release, like, and just, and, hey, it's okay. I've been there. I know what you're going through. And in that sense, I've never had kids there, but you're not crazy. And it's
not,
okay. And if you don't process these emotions and you don't talk through them, they're just going to compound and get worse and worse and worse.
Explode. Bottle up.
And it was so easy. I mean, it didn't require, I mean, I was just available, and we're talking on, you know, getting to know each other. And I just met these people 4 minutes beforehand, and you know, but it's just, you just minister to them and you love on them, and you're like, we're so here for you. You don't even know how much, and just tell them, like, you don't even know how much we love you. We just met, but we're with you. And they're like, all of a sudden it's like, are you kidding me right now? It was life to them. And how easy was that? You know, it required me nothing. You know, and I know the impact it had on them. It breathed life into them, and it's going to help them be successful for the next 3 months. You know, and it's so easy.
So easy. And then we had talked about, as missions pastors, to truly focus. And missions sending groups can do the same thing. Let's say they're dealing with team unity. We can talk about books on team unity. We're actually going to do a class in a couple of weeks on team unity, because it's the #1 reason why people leave the field. Not culture shock. It's not the carnality or the darkness of the country going to. It's the American missionaries can't get along with each other.
Yeah, Rob offended me, and I don't like him anymore, and I don't want to work with him.
Yeah, I mean, right? I'm done. He's a jerk, and I'm awesome, and I mean, we're talking about 80% of missionaries leave the field because of interactions with other missionaries. So a book on that, times of prayer on that, saying, hey, it's totally normal. And you know what? God's going to get you through it. And when you open up the entire New Testament, what is it talking about? Love one another in the church. Yeah, love those outside, but mostly love those in the church. And then that would be under team unity, and this is just for the sake of time. I think I would just go through it. Culture. Where are you at culturally? Is there a book about it? Like in the very beginning, understanding culture shock. Well, once you've processed through those first 2 years of those seasons of culture shock, well, now how do I actually lead cross-culturally? How do I teach cross-culturally? How do I transfer the leadership of the ministry from me to them and empower them cross-culturally? How do I move the budget from my control to their control? There's so many levels of culture. This is not something that we learn in class and then we go do. We're constantly learning and constantly developing these things. So the support, the moral support, it can go across the board, and there's so many good resources. We looked at that website, missionary, Ask a Missionary, or resources for missionaries. There's good stuff out there. You could search stuff out and then send to the missionary. Here's 5 books that everybody recommends. Maybe one of them will work for you. Like, you don't even know what they're going through. You just know that somebody else has written a book about it, so you just offer it to them. When they know that somebody cares like that, and they can download that as a PDF and read it, change their life. So team unity, culture, family, marriage, parenting, so many details, stuff about finances, just constantly loving, counseling. And I think what Mike is underlying here is none of this stuff is scripted. None of it is memorized. This is getting a cup of coffee over FaceTime or whatever the situation is with somebody that you love, even if you just met them. It's like, oh, you want to go on the mission field? Let's go down to the local coffee shop and let's just talk. My heart and my time is yours. Let your heart be a part of my heart, and let's just work with this together. That's what we're talking about. That's what moral support looks like. And it can go into a whole other aspect with emergency and security. We'll talk about that in about 4 weeks from now. Our next subject, Mike, is logistic support. What are some of those practical logistic support things that we can do on a support team, as a support caretaker? What are some of the things that you recommend that we can get involved with even now, or encourage people to do for us if we're going on the field?
Yeah. So first, as a missionary, and we've already said this, it's your job. You're the lead manager of your care team.
Yeah, you're the initiator.
Yeah, it's your job to manage. It's your job to do the training. It's your job to do that. Now, I say that speaking to missionaries. If I'm speaking to a missions pastor, I'm going to say it's your job to train the care teams. It's your, and as a missions pastor at Calvary Chapel Saving Grace, I have a care team ministry. We do meetings once every other month, and we get together and we talk through things, and I do a little bit of training with them, and just take them and develop the care teams slowly, and help them become better ministers to the missionaries. And what I'm also doing is extending myself, and hopefully making more of me to help minister to the missionaries, because I can't do it all. And so to the missionary, so your job is to manage your care team, and it's those select few individuals that you're communicating with more. Basically, is that it, and you're communicating more information to these individuals, because there's a deeper circle of confidentiality there.
Okay.
Now, on the church side, the needs for missionaries are monumental. It's, finances we've already talked about, and most people don't realize, you don't understand, missionaries can't go and get a job, right? They can't go to a country and get a job, nor would we, if they could, would we want them to, because we want them to do the work of the ministry, not work 40 hours a week in some factory. That's not the goal here. And a lot of people, we've talked to a bunch of people, just, good old people, here is like, you hippie, get a job, right?
That's right.
And they don't understand support raising is like, well, you're just lazy. That's how they think of it a lot of times. And it's, well, no, you understand, I can't move somewhere and legally get a job. It's not possible. I have to be sent. Paul knew what he was talking about in that sense.
I remember Paul was a citizen of Rome.
Yeah.
Therefore, he could work anywhere he wanted to.
And Paul was a tent maker.
It's a little bit unique. Yeah.
And so forth. I was saying, how should they go unless they're sent? That's the idea.
Can I just add something really quick with that? I was in Mexico and I was able to work. I was a first grade teacher. But honestly, it was like pennies to the dollar of what was like an income. So, you're working 60 hours a week, bringing home $300 a month. It's not enough to support you, but it was a way in. So, it's like the Lord definitely leads you in unique situations. For me, it was my language school. Being able to teach first grade in English to these kids was my language school, But still, it if it wasn't like absolutely the Lord leading it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But like, there's definitely unique situations,
Sure.
you know.
Everything's different.
Yeah.
And you learn to speak Spanish
Yeah,
through
because
that.
I had to translate everything.
You were 17?
No, when I moved there, I was 20, 21.
Oh, I thought you were younger.
That was my vision tour.
Oh, that was your vision tour. Sorry. It's been so many years, I forgot.
Yeah.
So just some practical things. We talked about communication and logistical support, helping them communicate. We put down in our notes, telling them what to put on a newsletter, printed newsletter, what to say, what not to say. Do you want to comment a little bit about how we can help guide the missionary from this side on different ways to do communication?
Yeah. Communication can be sensitive, and you have what we call circles of communication, where your broadest sense is what you're posting on a public profile on Facebook or a blog. And you want to be a little bit more sensitive with your communication there, because you realize not everybody that's reading that's understanding your situation. They're not going to have the level of grace for you like your pastor might have, and stuff like that. So, say you're sharing a prayer request, and hey, pray for our family, But behind that prayer request is, my wife and I we're not seeing eye to eye at all constantly. Now that might be something you share with your missions pastor, your senior pastor, your close friend, to get counseling and stuff like that. But not something you're going to put in an update letter. So there's those, guard your heart, type wisdom in that.
Just being discreet.
Just being discreet. You don't. It's not everybody's business. Your business is not everybody else's business. And a lot of times, as pastors, a lot of times people believe it is. Because whatever and missionaries, you live your life in a fishbowl, and that's part of it. But at the same time, it's not everybody's business.
Right.
But you still want prayer. You still want accountability. That's why we keep hounding communication. A lot of times, and I'm always talking to missionaries, like, did we put that on this one with the mental illness, or was that?
I think that's later.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to communicate when things are getting rough. Like, you have to make that effort. Call us up and have a conversation with us. We're not going to kick you off the mission field because you're struggling in your marriage or you're struggling as a single, missionary, whether guy or girl or like. Those are things we can help walk through, and you could get accountable. We could pray for you.
So you've been a single girl on the field for 4 years, and you've gotten a marriage proposal every week of all those 4 years. Yeah. It got so bad with Jill that I would just take him home and just burn him.
Yeah.
So she wouldn't even see him. Because she's like, I can't get another proposal. It's killing me. Right.
Yeah. And you don't need to be alone in that.
Every week she got a marriage proposal.
Yeah. Because she was a single gal, working in Africa.
She was a single American living in the middle of nowhere, and every guy there said, that's my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they
every
put
guy's
on suit and ties and came to the gate and said, I have a letter for Mrs. Jill. And I was like her big brother. So I was seen as her father, even though we were within a year of each other. I was still like her brother, dad.
Yeah.
And so I would say, well, let me have the letter, and I'll just talk to her about that.
And their motivation had nothing to do with love.
And over and over.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to communicate and talk and get counsel and those type of things. And those are logistical support with those individuals that are in that innermost circle of trust, obviously.
And not to paint a picture, if you are struggling, that everything is perfect. So being able to say, it's a hard season. The emotions are hard. We're drained. We're tired. We're not giving up, but we need help. So that kind of discernment. Okay, so let's move on to finances. How can we help not just giving money, but maybe managing that money and logistically managing finances?
I mean, as a missionary, and even communication with logistical support, you might need somebody's help doing a couple snail mail letters every month to people. In the context of money, you need to have a tax person. I can't tell you, most missionaries I talk to don't pay taxes because somebody at some church said, oh, you're a missionary, you don't have to pay taxes. You have to pay taxes.
Now they're criminals
Yeah.
and pastors at the
you
same
know,
time.
20 years
And
ago paying
20 years, that's tax evasion.
they
You
don't
go to
make
you go to jail for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, you still have to. You're right. You might not, at the end of the day, be paying taxes, but you have to file. You have to do
file.
that, and
Yeah.
a lot of times it's just more ignorance. It's not out of malicious intent, and
Yeah.
and so we get a lot of missionaries. It's just like, no, that's just the worst thing. We got to go back now. We had a mission. We had to go back 17 years, and help
Wow, I
and
didn't
work
know
with
that
the IRS to figure out, because you don't have records for 17 years ago, and figure out how to navigate that, because we want to be like above board, right? We don't want to be crooked. We're not, like, we want to be good citizens in that sense, and you need a tax guy now, but also missionary taxes are different. So that's what an organization helps, because a lot of times churches don't know how to do it. They might know how to do like pastoral taxes with housing allowances, stuff like that, but they don't know how to do missionary taxes. And so,
And the point is, if you're out of the country for so many months, I think it was like a little over 11 months a year, consecutively out of the country, then your tax bracket totally changes.
Yeah.
Because you're not here taking the resources. But you still need to file.
Yep.
You still need to pay something. So it requires a special missionary-focused tax man
Yeah.
to do that. And so luckily, we had this brilliant accountant in our church that said, I'd love to do that. Like this
Full-on
guy,
geek.
he sees a spreadsheet, he gets all excited.
Yeah.
He's got this big old Dell,
it's like
Yeah.
big old
7
Dell
font.
computer, and he's like, and I get close to him, like, no way. That guy saved my life all the time.
Yeah.
Without his skills, I'm a dead man.
Yep.
He actually got mad at me the other day
Yeah,
because
good.
he spent, I think, 20 or 30 hours getting my taxes ready for the ministry and the personal and the whole thing, and I got sick and I forgot to file.
Oh.
Like, he gave them to me, they're all done, and he called me up, he goes, how'd they go? I'm all, I forgot to file. I have never heard him get mad at me on a text before, but I'm like, it was justified.
You heard it loud and clear.
It was justified. This guy worked.
Oh,
He
I've gotten some
hours.
verbal lashings from him
And then
before.
he verbal lashed me, and it was needed. But he has had my back for 15 years.
It's such
15
good verbal
years.
lashing.
Slap on the face, no big deal, bro. I love you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Slap me again,
Yeah.
and then stay with me for another 15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're great. And so we
Yeah.
have those people in our congregations, and you have organizations that you can access to get that stuff. And those are huge. When missionaries are calling me, we talk, yeah, we'll help you do your tax. They're like, oh, it's like such a relief. Like, really? Yeah, because it's, I mean, who wants to, the guy he's talking about cruises the IRS website for a good time on a Friday
For
night.
fun.
Like, it's just, oh, praise God for you. And he dives in and he figures it out, and he calls lawyers and geeks out with them. And
he starts talking about form numbers and letters. And,
yeah, awesome.
he gets really excited.
I'm like coloring with crayons
Yeah,
now.
that's
I'm
right,
like,
yeah. So we talk about taxes. We also talk about somebody being a signer on your bank account, like
Yeah.
family members, maybe even your missions pastor, somebody that can be a power of attorney. So tell us maybe a story or so about like when would you need a power of attorney?
Yeah, all the time. Because you're out of the States. You cannot, there's things you can't do. You need somebody that can go to your bank account, your bank, and speak on your behalf and do some stuff. Because there's times where, you get hacked. You need somebody to go deal with the fraud that's taking place because you're staying up at 3 o'clock in the morning to call the local branch here because and somebody that you could send into the bank for you, and they have power of attorney. They're a signer on your bank account. Obviously, that person is, it's a parent. It's a close.
Somebody that has the time and cares.
Yeah,
Yes.
not just some random person that signed up on a clipboard, type thing. But those are stewardship things that you need to have in place, as a missionary.
And then this concept of always being willing to learn. Google wasn't a thing until I came back to become a missions pastor, and the secretary walked in. She goes, "Rob, why don't you Google that?" I'm all, "What's that?"
Yeah, what's
I have
Google?
no idea. So, for example, on Tuesday, two nights ago, I had given my little thumb drive to the guy in the back to put the video on, and it was brand new, so it hadn't been formatted. And now this guy's a little older, right? And he had never formatted, doesn't use a Mac. He was like, what do I do? As I was counseling one of the missionary students up front, he went on Google and said, how do I format this little thing for this? But I walked back 10 minutes later, it's done. And I said, how'd you do it? Did you go into this? He goes, yeah, of course I Googled it. I'm all, praise the Lord. The guy's a lot older than me, and most people that are older than me say, forget technology, right? Forget learning, forget changing. And he was like, you know what, I'm a missionary, and missionaries help people on all levels. They just learn it and they do it. For the sake of time, we talked about in logistics, when they come home on furlough, what do they need? 3 things. They need somewhere to sleep, they need something to drive, and they need some way to communicate. So we say, give them a bed, and this, for a family, it's 5 beds. Give them a bed, give them a car, give them a phone. You give your missionaries on furlough those 3 things, everything else works itself out. We're talking they get off of the plane, the car is washed and ready, fixed, gassed, car seats are in it, if they got kids, everything. The car's washed ready, the phone has already been purchased, if it's a Go phone or some little prepaid, whatever, drop the money and get it done, and you've already found a place for them to sleep. And if they got kids, you found somebody that says, I want a bunch of young kids in my house, or I want this. And you never take missionary families and break them up. Like you put half the kids there and half the kids there. Their whole lives on hold all the time. When they're on furlough, they should be somewhere that's comfortable. If they have those 3 things, they can do it. And any of us can provide this. We don't need to be theologians or missiology experts to do this.
Nope. And this is like at our church, I've over the years developed our care teams, and they manage this completely, and it is such a breath of fresh air for me, because I'm free not to worry about where the missionaries, it's getting handled, and it's so great. And then they're also bringing the personal touch. The moms are getting together and gathering some Target gift cards, so the wife can go to get some clothes for the kid, or whatever it might be, putting together some gift baskets and just simple things, and they're putting that personal just touch on it that for a missionary, it's like, I'm loved. I'm coming home and it's a breath of fresh air for them. Like, you don't have to worry, we got you covered. And that's what a church should do. And we should do it well.
What would you do for your own family coming back from serving overseas? Right?
And
they've been in the military. When they come home, take care of them.
And there's depending on what missionary and what stage of culture shock they're in, I'll talk to the care teams about like, hey, don't take them to Disneyland, because you're going to toast them, because they're coming off from Africa, going through craziness. Don't take them to Disney. I know that's a great heart. In 2 years from now, bring them home, take them to Disney. It's going to be great. But right now, where they're at, probably like Claim Jumper. Let's avoid that. Because you're going to have a missionary that like, plate of food that big, it costs $45 for whatever, and they're like, it's going to. And so I'm helping the care teams on this side learn how to minister where you're not going to just toast your missionary, but you're going to minister to them, and you're going to provide for them based upon where they're at. There's some missionaries that come home, they've been over there for 10 years. The Claim Jumper sounds fantastic, and so you learn to navigate that.
You know your people, absolutely. All right, let's look at prayer support. With prayer support, interceding for them, standing in that gap, there's massive spiritual warfare, and sometimes there's mental breakdowns. Talk to us just a little bit about how we can stand in the gap for a missionary.
This is huge. Obviously the missionaries, the warfare that we go through on the mission field is radically different than the States. I always say the enemy's warfare that he wages in the States is to get us to believe that there isn't a war. We go to our nice, comfortable churches, we have a cup of coffee, everything's great, and we're just rocked to sleep by weak Christianity. That's the enemy's goal in America, and he's doing it, and he's succeeding. And be distracted by your Hummers and your Starbucks cups and blessings, not bad things, but we get distracted to believe that there is no battle. Right? And he's just rocking us to sleep, And because if he could do that, and we're so like just comfortable, he knows we're ineffective, and that's his warfare here. But when you go overseas, I was actually where you were in Port-au-Prince at Brian
Haiti.
McDaniel's
In Haiti,
in Haiti. One night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I heard a girl in the room talking. And I couldn't understand it. And I sat up. I'm like, dude, there's somebody in this room talking. And it was me. Trent was actually asleep in another bed. And then
Trent, Pastor Mike. Okay.
And then Trent's son. And so I get up and I'm looking around in the room. I turn my flashlight on. And there's a girl talking, like right where Rob is.
Okay.
Clear as day. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And so I've been in Africa. I've been with witch doctors. I understand spiritual warfare. So I'm like, dude, this is just demonic, right? And so I rolled over and went to sleep. Hey, you know, greater is he who is in me than he is in the world. Let's go.
Yeah.
Dude, you're not, I'm full on going to preach the gospel here in Haiti.
You didn't start throwing oil everywhere.
Let's go. Like, I'm gonna wait. I told this to a lady. She's like, what did you do? Okay, check it out. I rolled over and I went to sleep. I had to teach the next day. I need my rest. Like this is demonic, whatever. So I woke up the next morning. I'm like, dude, Trent, this is weird. There was a chick in our room talking last night. I don't know what it was. And I'm sharing this. And Brian McDaniels, you guys know who Brian McDaniels are?
Yeah.
Psycho, right?
Crazy Brian, yeah.
He goes, oh, bro, what'd you just say? Right? And I'm like, dude, he goes, dude, check it out. If you know Brian, that's like, oh, bro, dude. He goes, so a few weeks ago, there was a pastor, and at like 3 o'clock in the morning, he woke up screaming. He ran out the front door and he's just screaming. And we're all like, you know, we're ready for battle, right? You know, Brian, he's like, it's going down now, you know. And they all run out, and he's out there going, dude, there's a girl in the room talking right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, this happened to them, and some whacked out witch doctor, he's imitating this witch doctor, it's like, comes out, it's like, who couldn't sleep last night? And he's sharing the story, and that happened to, so all that to say, fun stories.
Nice.
Warfare is real. I mean, we dealt with demon possession all the time in Africa. We medicate it here because we don't believe in demon possession here, right? But there you see it, and you see this demon calling out your name and going, I know what you were thinking, like what you were, you know, and you're like, whoa.
And demons standing on the chest, and you can't breathe.
For
and
sure.
You're trying to speak, and you can't speak, and they're right there.
At
Absolutely,
night,
yeah. It's normal.
And so a lot of times for us, this is like imaginary. Because again, we're under a different warfare. The enemy doesn't want us to believe this is true. But you go over there, and this is where we're standing in the gap for the missionaries on the spiritual warfare and the intercession, and it's so radically important. And we need to understand the spiritual warfare. Brian Broderson's book, you could read it in like, 10 minutes. It's just a little tiny pamphlet thing.
We actually translated it into Sinhalese in Sri Lanka because the local church, which was very small, they said, this is amazing. Yeah. We've never heard anything like it. And all it was I think 6 sermons transcribed into a book. 6 Sunday morning sermons on spiritual warfare made into a book.
It was really good.
It was life-changing for these guys in Sri Lanka.
To what you said about you're unable to speak or breathe, is that like while you're sleeping?
No, you wake up. You wake up to this physical pressure on your body, and it's a demon, and he's physically dealing with you.
Oh, then you wake up.
Yeah. You wake up, and you're sitting there, and there's a demon pressed upon you, and you're trying to say the name of Jesus, and it's like your words just fall from your mouth. And after a while, an hour or so, everything kind of goes away, but there's a physical, spiritual
It happens
attack.
so many times.
All the time.
I had experiences like that.
Right.
Even like at home.
Well, you can have them here.
And I wasn't sure, like, okay, I feel like something on top of me.
It's physical. It's demonic.
And Paul,
I can't speak like while I'm asleep
Yeah.
or trying to say, or something in my dream I'm saying in the name of Jesus, and then I just wake up and I feel like
and Paul says,
Spiritual
put on the
warfare.
whole armor of God for a reason, because there's a battle. And why I could roll over and go to sleep when some crazy ladies in my room talking is because I got the armor of God on. We're good. He's my rear guard. He's guarding the front, back, all around. Greater is me who's in. I'm preaching the gospel to myself. As I'm freaked out. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm freaked out And I recognize, dude, this is a spiritual, but I do not war against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities and spiritual hosts of wickedness. Boom, armor of God on, Bible, let's go. We're going to reach this place.
And
right?
then sleep.
And I need my sleep, right? But you
but
gird
when-
up, you battle cry,
Yeah.
like, let's go.
But
you know?
like when Elisha dealt with, the armies around him, and he said, Lord, open the eyes of my servant.
Yeah.
And show him what's happening. That's all you're saying is he made a decision based upon missiological teachings that when you're out in the field, Jesus said, I will be with you to the end of the age. So no matter what happens, I will be with you.
Yeah, all power has been given to me in heaven, and this just, we know these verses. We soften them in our comfortable North American, mentality. But when you get there, it's life. Like, I'm holding on to that, and I'm believing that because I'm in battle, right? And we used to watch Braveheart, and they're just like, yeah, they're like that's as a man, that's what let's go. Like, this is warfare, and I'm going to engage a good warfare. That's what all this stuff we're talking about is engaging in good warfare and being a good soldier. And we talked about mental breakdown. We've had missionaries have mental breakdowns, whether it's from pressure or culture shock, or whether it's from actual
Chemical imbalances.
We had a missionary who was schizophrenic. We had a missionary that got so whacked out on malaria that he believed he was Jesus Christ incarnate.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Standing on a table in the middle
That's right.
of the city,
Yelling.
preaching that he's Christ.
That's right. That's right.
And
I forgot about that.
we got to bring him home. No, hold on. We need to help them.
His fever was like 104. Took all the wrong meds.
We had a missionary with Saving Grace.
awesome.
We had a missionary. It's now well over a year. He didn't let us know that he had bipolar, and he had one episode when he was in college, 10 years before this, and hasn't had an episode since, hasn't been on medications or anything, and he spun out, and he spun out hard, and he's in a very dark, very closed, very wicked country with thick warfare, and he lost his mind. He locked his wife into the bathroom, turned the shower on him because she's convinced that she had a demon, and he's washing her of her sin. Like, he's losing his mind. She gets her son out, they leave, and she's calling me at
She's living in a hotel or something.
She bailed at that point.
They separated,
Yeah.
but they're still in the same country.
Yeah.
Because they can't go anywhere.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and I get the phone call of this is happening. I'm like, what in the world do I do? I don't know how to do that. He's bipolar, and we get the counsel, we got him to a doctor, and we started ministering to him. You're not disqualified from the ministry. It's okay, you're sick. And we're going to stand in the gap, and we're going to see you healthy because we believe you have a calling on your life. Right? A lot of times we're just going to write them off as you are useless for the gospel. No, it took a year. We kept him there in country because he wasn't healthy enough to get on a plane. It would have been he'd probably ended up in Saudi Arabia somewhere. Just because mentally he was gone.
Yeah, he would have lost it.
And so he was under good treatment with good doctors, had a good support team locally around him. They're communicating with me and this individual's parents. And we left him there for 2 months in country to get help, get stabilized. And then we got him and his wife on a plane, and we brought him home for a year. They were with us. We have counselors that work through our church, actual professional
Christian, Bible-based, professional
counselors that they're working with the doctors with medication regimens and stuff, and we helped them, and they're back out on the mission field doing fantastic.
Right.
So again, this is going back to the missionaries are people. They're not these superheroes, superstars. I mean, they are, but they're just people that have weaknesses just like we do. And they're not disqualified because he had 104 fever and went whacked out, and those type of things. But this is why we pray for our missionaries. We're engaging in warfare, and we're standing in the gap. because our theology dictates that. Because again, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against, that's where the battle's taking place, and we are just as much involved in that here as they are there. They're involved in a physical sense. We're supposed to be involved in a spiritual sense in that. And that ministry is just as important, if not more important, than the actual physical ministry that they're doing. And that's our responsibility on this side.
We think of our missionaries when we're over there or back here as family members. How far would I go for my own family members? Let's say my brother has a psychological break. Do I write him off and he's no longer my brother? No, he's just having a really bad time. And sometimes there's medication. Sometimes it's counseling. Sometimes it's 3 months without the stress of dealing with people that are dying because of some broken country. It depends on the situation. There's no perfect answer. And so prayer support is a big part of that. Let's just quickly, as we're winding down, let's just talk about reentry. We are going to do an entire session on reentry. It probably will be our second to last one in the semester. But with reentry, Mike, would you want to just leave us with a couple thoughts?
Yeah, reverse culture shock is harder than initial culture shock, if you could call it initial culture shock. Returning home is a harder experience. My wife's smiling at me because she got dragged through it. We were dating at the time, and I went from bush in Africa, no electricity, and then 3 days later, I'm in Las Vegas. Like literally, I'm in Las Vegas.
He got to LA. We took him to the Las Vegas.
The Send the Message conference used to be out
And
there.
well, look, there's a big pyramid and a big lake coming off the top. Look at this.
And so
like Africa.
You know, and again, you're like I said, we're dropping dead bodies off and stuff like that, and you bury that stuff. It's your defense mechanism, and eventually that's all going to come out. And I remember we were driving to a friend's house in Riverside one night to go to dinner. I had a full-blown panic attack. And I'm just like, I'm wigging out, and I have no idea what's going on. I'm thinking I'm having a heart attack. Like, what in the world is going on with me
Never had
right
one
now?
before.
Never had one before. I've had 2 of them, and it was during this time. It took me a year to feel somewhat normal. And to process it. I mean, I had Rob's my missions pastor, great missions pastors, great senior like, it's not like I was alone in this, but we recognize it's real.
That you're human.
And that's why,
exactly,
that you're human, and that's why I always tell people, don't take them to Disneyland. Like, the worst thing you could do for your missionary, like in that context, again, missionaries that have been out there for 10 years have dealt with this.
And if they're coming out of Europe, it's no problem.
Europe's a whole different situation. But no, and reverse culture shock, it's legit. It's not something to flippantly throw off. Rob's going to recommend a book, Reentry Team by Neil Perillo. Great book. It's one of those that you have to read like 4 or 5 times before you go to the mission field, while you're on the mission field, and when you get back from the mission field. Because it helps you process all those things. He talks about having anxiety attacks and stuff in him, and I read that. I'm like, this is everything I'm going through right now. And I realized I'm not crazy. Even though she thought I was crazy. She still does.
But who can we go to if we're breaking down, or we know that our missionary's breaking down and we don't know what to say to them? Who can we turn to for help in this?
Yeah, and 101, never sympathize if you have no clue what they're going through. You know, I related a story. A guy said, hey, what was the hardest thing that you ever went through in Africa? And I said, well, there was this one time, this lady, we had these Ankolis that used to live behind us, and when they were in labor, because they're African, they don't plan ahead. She's now in labor. She's like, I should start to walk to the dispensary. That's 12 miles down the road so I can have my baby. And she goes into full-blown transition right outside our compound. I throw her on the back of my moped. And if you know Ankoli, she's like 300 pounds.
Yeah, right.
She's a big one. And she's in labor, and she dies before we get to the compound. She bled everywhere. And I have to drop off her, the dead baby that's, half born, if you want to picture that, and off at the dispensary. Then I have to go teach Romans, right? Like, that was my day, And this person turns out, it's like, I dealt with something like that. I'm like, what? He goes, I got this new Lexus, and it got a flat tire, and he starts going off, and I'm like, I want to kill you right now. Like, there's clearly you're no use for the gospel. There's no point for your existence. Like this, like these are like what I'm dealing with, right? You know, of like, did you just relate, like a person dying in labor and the baby dying with a luxury and AAA taking 45, you know, like, are you really, like, that's what you're saying? You know, don't relate to it. And I wanted to kill the person, you know, and of course I was in the flesh, but that was my emotional response. And
So who do we turn to?
You need specialty care. You know,
There's hope.
You need to go to Rob and be like,
not
dude,
the only
Rob.
I'm not the only one. And then I'll call somebody else that I know that went through worse.
Yeah. You need, this one is one of those ones that you need a little bit more specialty care. Your job, if you haven't gone through them, is just be an ear and say, I'm sorry, can we pray? Right? And don't say anything to them. Just listen to them. Don't judge them. Be an ear for them. And then send them to a veteran missionary.
You did give me good advice today. You said, just listen and then say, these trials were specifically designed for you. I don't understand them. Many of us won't understand it, but God gave this to you for a reason. I thought that was real wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to punctuate that, find a missionary that's been through that and say, can we talk to you? Can we work it out? Another missionary is going to definitely be able to give them that.
So would they contact churches to find missionaries?
Well,
or
contact your mission sending support team, your agency. You know, I mean, there's got to be something there. Like when I get stumped from something, I call Wes Bentley, or I call Neil Parolo, or I call Jeff Jackson, or somebody that I know. And if they don't know, they'll know somebody that does know. So within 5 or 10 minutes with a cell phone, we've got somebody that can help that person in that particular situation. I'm not a woman. I've never been raped. I've never lived on the field alone. So I find women that have been through that to help our women that are going through that. That was my job as a missions pastor, is get the right people with the right people and let the Lord work it out. Or just listen and say, I don't understand why, but I know God has a plan. All right, just a couple books to recommend as we conclude here. We know these books well. We've recommended them before, but for the sake of memory and for the sake of knowing that these books are important, Serving as Senders is crucial for those that are staying. Those that are going need to read it and then hand it out to everybody that's staying so they can support them. And those that are going need to read Friend Raising. And friend raising is the ability to create a support team without making the support team feel like they're all just money for you. No, these are my friends, and we're raising a family. We're creating a community. Those are two. And those are also on your syllabus, which are on the website if you need more, you know, if you're not writing them down now. And then finally, the Reentry Team. The Reentry Team is the book by Neil Parolo. He wrote Serving as Senders for the goers. And then when you return, Reentry Team, Mike had told me even today that when he read Reentry Team, I think he said 3 times, whatever. Either way, he said it was the most beneficial book for that reentry shock for him personally. So not just for those that are receiving, but for those that are coming back home, so that we all know what's going on, because knowing truly is half the battle. Mike, thank you so much for coming out and sharing with us. Mike can give you his card. I can give you his contact information. Tonight was just scratching the surface. We are here to help you guys fulfill God's calling on your life. Mike, can you close this in prayer?
Yeah. Lord, I pray that you would make us all effective ministers of the gospel of Jesus Christ. That our motivation would be for your glory, Lord, and that you would use us however you see fit, in whatever capacity we can, that we would be willing and able vessels just to be used by our Master. God, I pray that the stuff we talked about tonight, that we would implement and we would minister to missionaries. Lord, all of us can do that right now. And we would be an amazing support team for our missionaries. We would be those that intercede, that lose sleep in prayer for our missionaries and in standing in the gap for them. God, I pray that you would break our heart for the lost and give us your heart and your eyes to see the nations how you see them. And God, we thank you for this night. Pray that you would give us safe travels as we head home. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. God bless you guys. See you next week with your midterms finalized.
We had it was 3 hours of praying over this piece of